big dog.
What's up, guys? This is the best 3 bucks that I've shot, and figured I'd do a little video for you guys. I'm getting pretty excited for the season, and I figured this would kind of be a cool video to tell the story of each one of my best deer. I'll start off by saying all 3 of these deer were public land deer. National forest, and state forest. So they're all 100% public land. So you guys can do this kind of stuff too. It's very obtainable if you put your time in and get lucky. So I'll do them in chronological order. I kind of have them in order here. This one was 2017. And this is actually my favorite buck I've ever killed, and the heaviest buck I've ever killed. He dressed out at 205. He scored 130 and 7/8 as a non-typical, and this is a Vermont deer. So this is like my pride and joy right here. This is the first really big buck I shot. I'd killed some pretty good ones before this one, but this was like the first like real good one, and I've yet to beat the weight. So, but he, being from Vermont, I'd always, like, Vermont is like the place where I, value hunting the most, just because it's my, it's my backyard. So this buck, it was 2017, and I was actually running some cameras up in this big piece, really big woods, very low deer density. And I had gotten some pictures of an absolute giant 8-pointer. I mean, he was like 25, 26 inches wide. He probably scored in the like low 130s, something like that. Or not low 130s, low 140s as an 8-point. And just an absolute giant buck. So I was actually hunting that buck. And I had gotten pictures of him in 2016 as well. So, and 2015, I believe. I'm pretty sure I had him on camera for 3 years, that big 8. So I was out in there. It was the second day of the season. I started on the other side of the mountain that morning, and I did a big swing up on the mountain, and I never cut any big tracks. There was actually some snow that morning on that side of the mountain. Didn't cut anything big, nothing that I wanted to track. So I ended up pulling out there at like 10 o'clock or so, ran back to my house, got some lunch, met up with a buddy. We drove, my buddy was RJ. RJ, if you're watching him, what's up? We drove to a spot, and we were getting out of the truck. We were gonna go hunt, and something just didn't feel right. So we ended up leaving there and going back to the other side of the mountain where I had hunted in the morning. And by that time, it was probably like, 12:30 or something. We got out of the truck and just headed. And he went one way, I kind of went another. And I'd done probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles, and I was going really fast, just trying to cover ground and find sign. And I remember when I crossed a brook, I actually saw a pretty good track in the mud, which was a good sign. And after that, though, I had really not seen anything good. But I come up on this little flat by like a beaver pond, and I remember I was walking down this old log road, and I found a scrape, a fresh one. And I was like, oh, it's a good sign. Scrape, haven't seen any sign all day. Went like another 30, 40 yards, and boom, another scrape. It's like, man. And I'm pretty sure I went a little bit farther, and there was a third scrape. And when I found that third scrape, I was like, all right, I'm gonna hang out here for a minute, because 3 scrapes in that distance without seeing any, other sign for 3 or 4 miles, it's like a pretty good indicator. Time to slow down. So I just stood in that third scrape for probably, I don't know, 5 minutes. And when I was standing there, I heard something coming up below me, and I look, and a doe popped out of the beech brush, and I heard another deer coming. And lo and behold, it was him. And I just saw a big body deer, big rack, I was like, oh my God, there he is, like big giant Vermont buck. And I could have shot him way down through the brush at probably like 120, 130 yards, something like that. But he was kind of quartering up to me. So there was a ton of brush to my left, and I had like a couple little windows down below me, but I decided to try to let him go down there and see if he'd come up by me. It was kind of, all the land kind of ran all to like basically where I was. I was kind of coming through a notch. So I was pretty confident that the doe was gonna come up by me somewhere. And it felt like an hour, but it was probably only like 30 seconds. The doe pops out of the beech brush like probably 40 yards to my left, and he was like 10 steps behind her. And as soon as he came out in an opening, I shot, and he was probably 40 yards, 45. And after the first shot, he turned and ran right at me. And I ended up shooting him again in the neck at probably, I don't know, 20 yards, and he died right in front of me. And that was one of my best hunting memories. It really, it was incredible how it all happened. It took me and I think it was 4 or 5 guys. It took us, oh man, we didn't get out of the woods till almost 9 o'clock that night. I killed him at 2, so it was far enough. Gilly, I'm sure you're gonna watch this, you'll remember. Hell of a drag. Moving on, so that was a Vermont buck. This is New Hampshire buck, and in the summer of 2020, Connor, Nate, and I, we went up into this national forest piece. We were just scouting, and in the summertime. And I remember, you know, really kind of liking the looks of the area. And I remember I like pointed up at the mountain when we were leaving, and I was kind of half joking, but I kind of meant it. I was like, I'm gonna kill a big buck up there this year, and just kind of, you know, being cocky or whatever, and with my buddies. And, you know, we all kind of like laughed about it, whatever, and we left. I went back a little later in the summer and I set up a camera, and I ended up, into October, I ended up getting some pictures of this buck, which was really exciting. There's a couple other bucks in there too, but he was by far the biggest buck by a mile, you know. And I'll probably tell the stats real quick too, because that's what I did on that one. This buck, he scored 146 inches. I think he was 146 on the money. And if you come a little closer, I shot that tine off right there, but I had Pete LaJoy repair it, so you can see the break. So if he was the way he was naturally, he would have been like right on the 150 mark. I lost 3 or 4 inches there. So, but as he was after I killed him, he was 146 and he weighed 194 and a half. So this is the second heaviest buck I ever shot. But anyways, later in the summer, went back in there, I already said that, hung a camera, got some pictures of him, and it was November 3rd, and it was a Tuesday, I want to say. It was the first Tuesday of muzzleloader season. On that Monday, I was working with my buddy Jake, and when we were at work, we saw the forecast for snow for the next day. So we asked our boss if we could have the next day off to go hunt. He gave it to us, which was awesome. And that next day, we got up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, drove 3 hours over there. I ended up getting out of the truck and just going straight up the mountain as fast as I could. And I remember I was way up, way up on the mountain, and I finally cut his track, and it was snowed in. But it had snowed all night. So I knew he wasn't, I mean, he could have been a long ways away from me, but I knew he probably wasn't that far because it was early in the year. It was November 3rd. And I knew he was, you know, at least 8 hours, you know, I was within 8 hours of him. That's all I knew. And so I got on his track and I just went as fast as I could. I probably got on his track at like 9:30. And he took me on this serious adventure up and over this mountain. Only deer track up there. But I remember I'm coming up through these spruces, real tight spruces on them, and I'm still going really fast. And I look up to my left and I see a deer take off. And I was like, dang, it was probably him. So I got off his track, walked over to the deer that got up and took off, and I see that it was a small deer's bed, and that deer ran down off the bank. It was a doe. But the crazy part about the story is when I was standing there looking at the doe bed, like off to my left a little bit, like 10 feet or so, I see another track coming down off the spruces, and I look, and that was the big buck's track, his track, but it was smoking fresh. So this is the part of the story that I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty positive if I didn't see that doe get up and run down off the mountain, I could have taken his old track for 10 miles up and over the mountain on another mountain before he ever came back. And I would have never found that fresher track, possibly. But once I found that smoking fresh track and I knew it was him, I mean, he had an ungodly sized track, like 4 fingers, huge clown foot. And so I get on the fresh track, and he was actually headed downhill. So I'm going downhill, and probably 5 or 10 minutes after I'd got on his track fresh, sure enough, right down below me, boom, I see him jump over the mountain. He was bedded, and all I saw was, he didn't even look real. I mean, it was by far the biggest buck I've ever seen in my life, you know, alive. And he was just, he didn't even look real. He bounded down off the mountain. He was probably 20 yards from me. And right when that happened, I made a split decision, like a split-second decision, to go back up to the top of the mountain where his tracks, like where he went up through in the morning and came down through fresh, because it was kind of like the nose of the mountain, and he kind of liked that spot for some reason. I mean, he went through there twice in like 8 hours or whatever. So I was like, I'm just gonna run back up there, because sometimes when you jump them up high, they'll like do a loop and try to get above you. So I ran back up probably, I don't know, 150, 200 yards back up to the top. And right when I got to the top of the mountain, we met head on. And I mean, I'm talking 10 yards. He was coming up over the backside. All he did when I jumped him, he ran down off the mountain, circled the peak, and was coming back up to the top. So it worked out beautifully. I've done that probably, I swear I've done it 150 times tracking, and it's never worked out. But it happened to work out for this guy. So it was a good one to work out on. And met him head on. I had the muzzleloader, and he was facing me. Half of his head was behind a big spruce tree. And I remember I kind of like leaned over like this, and I just saw him like kind of looking at me, and he kind of shifted over with me. And I put it like right here, and I shot. And he ran right by me, because there wasn't much real estate. We're like up on the top of the mountain pretty much. He ran right by me, like 5 feet by me. I wish I was videoing that part, but I wasn't. And long story short, after that, I had to chase and chase and chase and chase him. But I hit him in the windpipe, so he couldn't go very good. So I ended up getting him. And there is a video on the channel of this buck. It's one of my better performing videos. So after I initially hit him, that's when I put the camera on my head, because, actually no, I met up with my buddy and he wore it. And he went with me for that like final shot. And yeah, I'll play some clips of that video. I probably already have. And you guys should go watch that video if you haven't. That was 5 guys helped me drag, and it was 7 hours it took us to get him out. And that was probably the hardest drag of my life up to this point. The last 100 yards of the drag, we had to go across this massive river, and it was, you know, I had done like 10, 12 miles when I had killed him, and then another 3 or 4 to get him out. And then that river at like, I think it was 7 o'clock at night, it was extremely hard. But anyways, on to my final. And actually, it's funny how they're in chronological order and in order smallest to biggest. So this is my biggest buck rack wise. He scores 162 inches, 162 and 5/8 as a non-typical. He only has a few non-typical points, but it got him into the 160s, so I went with the non-typical score just because I like the 160 number. And he's a giant, absolute giant buck. He weighed 158 pounds. And this story is kind of a cool story. It was Christmas Eve down in Massachusetts with Nate and Connor, headed down there blind to an area we had never been before. We all got out of the truck and we're like, all right, we're gonna go up, make a swing. If we don't find anything, we're gonna go somewhere else. We all get out of the truck, we make a couple mile loop. All of us didn't see anything, no tracks, nothing. It had snowed a little bit the night before, not a ton, a little bit. So we got in the truck and we're all looking at our phones, Onyx, whatever. And I'm like, this one area just kind of stood out to me. I liked what it had on the map and I was like, let's try here. So we drove. I think it was like an hour from where we were, got out of the truck, and all three of us headed out this like log road. Nate cut up the bank first, and then it was Connor and I. We're going, boom, to the left side of the road, massive rub, like giant. And I was like, oh, this is good. You know, there's a big one in here somewhere, but still no tracks up to this point. Connor cut up the bank second, and then I kept on going out, and I just went straight out and on that logging road, and I finally started to cut up after probably 2.5 miles. And as I'm working my way up, I'd seen a few smaller tracks, but nothing big. I come up onto this flat and I see where there was a bunch of deer tracks. And what I had figured out is there was 2 or 3 does, I want to say there was 3, and a buck, and they were all laying on this flat, and they heard me coming because there was a little bit of snow. It was kind of crunchy there. And so they heard me coming and they had run. Now the does went up to the left and the buck went by himself and he went to the right. And when I was looking at his track, it wasn't overly impressive size-wise. I mean, it was, you know, probably 3 inches, something like that. Like, you know, it wasn't that big, not that wide. But the one thing that I did like about the track was he was really dragging his feet, so I knew he was tired. And he seemed like he was turning his feet out in the front a lot, which usually is an indicator to me of an older buck. So I told the guys, hey, I just jumped some deer. I think one of them's a big buck. He's headed up to this, you know, area. I'm gonna start tracking him. I'm gonna give him a little while and then I'm gonna start tracking him. So I ended up following the doe tracks for a while just to see where they went and, you know, see how scared they were. And they went quite a ways and they were running the whole way. So I was like, yeah, they really heard me coming or smelled me or something. So after I followed them for a few hundred yards, I came back and I started on the buck track. And he took me up through this mountain and he only ran for maybe 80, 90 yards, something like that. And I was going on him and he took me by a couple big signposts, which was really cool. And then he got me up on this flat of the mountain, like up towards the top. And one thing I haven't said yet is I was grunting the whole way. Like every 2 or 3 steps, I'd blow on my grunt tube. And, you know, I was hoping I'd grunt him back. And once I hit that flat, I kind of slowed down because everything up until that flat was pretty good incline. You know, he was headed up pretty good. And when he got on that flat, I just kept going real nice and easy, keeping my head up, blowing the grunt tube, you know, every few steps. And all of a sudden I heard something. I heard like a twig break. And I turned and right in front of me, like 40 yards, here he comes, angling back towards me. And I just saw,
oh my God,
big rack.
Oh my God.
And heart went right up into my throat at that point because you know, he was just a giant. This was 2021 too. I don't know if I've said that yet. I don't think I have. So this was the year after this one. And he's quartering back to me and I'm trying to get a shot at him, trying to get a shot at my Woodman Arms muzzleloader with a peep sight. And he kind of comes into this few openings, and I just yelled at him. I think I mapped at him or whatever. I'm mapped, yelling. And he stops and looks right at me. And I put it right on his chest, and I shot, and he went right down. And he made a big like death roar, which was pretty gnarly. I've never heard that before. And there is a video of this deer on the channel. I think it's the best video, or not the best, but the most viewed video I have. And if you guys haven't seen it, you should check it out. But that was incredible. It took me like an hour to compose myself after I shot him. It's a little bit embarrassing in the video because I can like barely breathe after I shot him. But if they didn't make me that excited, I probably wouldn't love it as much as I do. So walked over there, couldn't believe my eyes. I called Connor, and all I could say to him was 150, 150, 150. And he's like, 150, no way. I'm like, and I was, you know, underselling him a little bit, but that's all I kind of, when I saw his frame come through, I was like, my God, that's a 150-inch buck. But I walked over to him. Connor ended up sprinting like 1.5 miles down over the mountain to find me. And I'll never forget, I think I have the video, and I should probably play it actually, of Connor's GoPro and him running up to greet me. It's hilarious. He's running full speed and just jumps from like 10 feet away, and I like give him a big hug. And he's like, what did you do? You know, freaking out. And he couldn't believe it. Nate ended up coming, and he couldn't believe it either. So I either grunted the buck back and he was coming back looking for me, thought I was another buck, or he was headed back to go get those does. I don't know which one. There's no way to really tell, but he came back and I shot him. So that's all that matters. And yeah, so this is the biggest buck of my life. It took us not very long to get him out, probably 2 or 3 hours. It was pretty steep in spots, but nothing crazy. We got on a couple logging roads and it wasn't too bad. Ended up getting Taco Bell that night. It was a good night. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you're still watching, it's my best 3 bucks. Yeah, I hope you guys subscribe and like the videos we've been putting out. We've been doing a lot of video podcasts as of recently with the Big Buck Theory. And I've got 2 bucks that I shot last year that I'm going to be putting out in November. I got 5 guys this year that are filming with the channel, and I'm sure a lot of you guys that are subscribed already know that, but if you haven't, they're some of the best deer hunters doing it. You know, they're really good young guys, really getting after it, and they're all going to try their best to film this year. Also, I have Josh coming with me this year who's filming, and we're going to try to get some good tracking stuff over the shoulder with the good camera. That's the goal. If we can get some good stuff for you guys, it would be awesome. So thank you. I appreciate it, and yeah, see you on the next one.